In 2017, 22-year-old Corinne Levesque vanished while backpacking on the beaches of Koh Lipe, Thailand. The official report concluded she likely drowned in a sudden squall, a tragic but unremarkable accident that left her family devastated. For 8 years, her father, Alistair, clung to that painful narrative until he bought a refurbished laptop from an online auction and discovered a single hidden image file. The photo of his daughter's unique bikini bottoms next to a mysterious Bitcoin address would shatter the story of an accidental death and expose a calculated crime far more chilling than he could ever imagine. This story is a difficult reminder that sometimes the simplest explanation isn't the truth. As we explore Alistair's journey for answers, think about what you would do if you were in his shoes. Let's uncover the truth together. For 8 years, Alistair Levesque's life had been painted in shades of gray. The vibrant colors had drained away in 2017, the year his daughter, Corinne, disappeared. Now, in 2025, he was a 58-year-old retired architect living a quiet, predictable life in Portland, Oregon. His days were structured around simple routines: coffee at sunrise, a walk through the quiet neighborhood, and hours spent sketching buildings that would never be built. He lived in the same house he and his late wife, Helen, had shared, but now it felt cavernous, its silence broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Helen had passed away 3 years after Corinne vanished. Her heart, Alistair always believed, simply unable to bear the weight of their unresolved grief. He rarely looked at photos of Corinne anymore. They were tucked away in a cedar chest in the attic. Seeing her smile, so full of life and promise, was like pressing on a bruise that never healed. The official story from the Thai authorities was that she'd been caught in a sudden, violent squall while swimming off Sunset Beach. A tragic accident. They had found her backpack in a guest house, her passport and return ticket neatly inside. It was a clean, simple explanation that left no room for questions, yet it was the questions that haunted Alistair in the dead of night. Corinne was a strong swimmer, cautious by nature. It just didn't fit. But with no other evidence, acceptance was the only path forward. His old laptop, a relic from a decade ago, finally gave up one Tuesday morning. It sputtered, whirred, and died with a quiet sigh. Alistair wasn't a tech person. He needed something basic for checking emails, reading the news, and managing his pension. He went online and found a website that sold refurbished electronics. He picked a standard-looking silver laptop for a couple of $100. It was practical, unremarkable, and perfect for his needs. When it arrived a few days later, he spent the afternoon setting it up. It ran smoothly, but it was cluttered with leftover files from its previous owner. Annoyed, he began the tedious process of deleting them. He dragged folders to the trash, emptying them without a second thought, until he came across one file buried deep within a system folder. It was named imgfinal01.jpg. He hovered his mouse over the delete button, but something made him pause. The name felt deliberate, final. A flicker of curiosity. An emotion he hadn't felt in years stopped him. He double-clicked. The image that filled the screen stole the air from his lungs. It was a picture taken of another computer monitor. On that monitor was a photograph of a pair of lime green bikini bottoms decorated with a black palm tree pattern. Next to that image was a piece of white paper, held in place by a strip of tape. On the paper, written in crude, blocky handwriting, were 3 lines of text. The first read, "Bitcoin F07582ZE. Below it was the familiar orange B logo of Bitcoin, followed by a long alphanumeric string. The final line simply said, Red 4621744703. Alistair's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew that bikini. Corinne had bought it specifically for her trip. She'd been so excited, calling it her lucky swimsuit. She had sent him a photo of herself wearing it on the beach, the same photo that was now the wallpaper on his phone, a picture he could barely stand to look at. The simple, tragic story of an accidental drowning dissolved in an instant, replaced by a terrifying, unknown truth. This image wasn't an accident. It was a message, a threat, a clue. The dull, persistent ache of grief he had lived with for 8 years sharpened into a burning, desperate need for answers. Who took this picture? Why? And what in God's name did it mean? Alistair knew he was out of his depth. He understood Bitcoin about as well as he understood theoretical physics. He printed the image, his hand shaking slightly, and called the one person he knew who might be able to help. His nephew, Julian. Julian was in his late 20s, a software developer who lived and breathed technology. He came over that evening, his expression shifting from casual curiosity to intense focus the moment he saw the printout. "Uncle Al, where did you get this?" he asked, his voice low. Alistair explained about the refurbished laptop. Julian examined the codes. "Okay," he said, pulling out his own laptop. "Bitcoin is a digital currency. It's mostly anonymous, which is why it's used for things people don't want traced." He typed the long string of numbers and letters into a website called a Blockchain Explorer, a page loaded with transaction details. "Here it is," Julian said, pointing to the screen. "This is a Bitcoin wallet address. And look at this. One single transaction. A deposit of 5 Bitcoin was made to this wallet on March 15th, 2010. Alistair felt a chill crawl up his spine. That's the day after Corinne went missing. "The money's just sat there ever since," Julian continued. "It's never been moved. Today, that's worth, over $250,000. He looked at the other codes. F07582ZE doesn't look like a standard transaction ID. It could be an account number at a crypto exchange, maybe a wallet ID. And RID 4621744703. That could be anything. A code name, a password, a reference number. A failed transaction? A payment that was never collected? The questions multiplied. "What about the laptop itself?" Alistair asked. "Can we find out where it came from?" Julian nodded. "That's the next logical step." The following morning, Alistair called the customer service line for the company that sold him the laptop. He was met with a polite but firm wall of privacy policies. They couldn't disclose information about previous owners. Alistair, however, was no longer the quiet, passive man he had been for the past 8 years. A new fire had been lit inside him. He persisted, calling back multiple times, escalating the issue to a manager. He explained the situation, emphasizing the connection to a missing person case. Finally, worn down by his tenacity, the manager agreed to investigate. 2 days later, she called back. "Mr. Levesque," she said, her tone serious, "I looked into the serial number for your device. It was part of a bulk shipment we acquired. It came from a police auction." "A police auction? Where?" Alistair pressed. "Bangkok, Thailand," the manager replied. "The laptop was seized 3 years ago during a raid on a small electronics repair shop." The place was suspected of being a front for a money laundering operation. Thailand. The pieces were beginning to connect, forming a picture that was growing darker with every new detail. Armed with this information, Alistair knew he couldn't handle this alone. He compiled everything he had: the photo, the Bitcoin transaction details, the information about the laptop's origin. He walked into the FBI field office in downtown Portland. He was eventually led to the desk of a young agent named Kimball. Agent Kimball listened patiently, his face impassive, as Alistair laid out the story. Alistair could see the skepticism in his eyes. An 8-year-old cold case from halfway around the world, based on a single image found on a used laptop. It sounded like something out of a movie. "Mr. Levesque, I understand this is difficult," Agent Kimball said carefully, "but international jurisdictions are complicated, and this evidence, while intriguing, is circumstantial." "Circumstantial?" Alistair repeated, his voice rising. "My daughter is gone. This is the first real lead in 8 years. That laptop was seized from a criminal operation in the same country where she disappeared. That can't be a coincidence." Perhaps something in Alistair's desperate conviction moved him, or perhaps the puzzle was just too interesting to ignore. Agent Kimball promised to make some inquiries through their legal attaché in Bangkok. Alistair left the office feeling a frustrating mix of hope and helplessness. He had set the wheels of bureaucracy in motion, but he feared they would turn too slowly. Weeks turned into a month. Alistair called Agent Kimball every few days, trying not to be a nuisance, but unable to sit still. Kimball was always professional, always non-committal. "We're looking into it, Mr. Levesque." Then, one afternoon, Agent Kimball called him. "Alistair," he said, forgoing the formal title for the first time, "I have something. We got the original Thai police reports from that raid on the repair shop." Alistair held his breath. "The shop owner was a small-time crook," Kimball explained. "He claimed he had no idea what was on any of the devices. He said he bought used electronics from all over, including from a pawn shop in the Satan province, near the southern islands. Calliope is in that province," Alistair said, his knuckles white as he gripped the phone. "I know," Kimball said. "And here's the part you need to hear. The Thai police interviewed the pawn shop owner back then. He kept a basic inventory log. The records from March 2017 show he bought a laptop and a digital camera from a local man named Anand, who he listed as a boat guide from Calliope." A boat guide. Alistair's mind flashed back to the last photos Corinne had uploaded to her travel blog. There were pictures of the beach, the sunset, the vibrant street food. And there was one photo of her talking to a local man on the beach. He was lean, with a weathered face and a baseball cap, gesturing towards the sea. Corinne was smiling, her backpack slung over one shoulder. He had always assumed it was just a random, friendly interaction. Now, that photo felt ominous. The official story of a tragic accident was dead and buried. This was a conspiracy, and his daughter was at the heart of it. Alistair knew what he had to do. Agent Kimball urged him to wait, to let the proper channels work. But Alistair couldn't wait. 8 years was long enough. He booked a flight to Thailand. He printed out the photo of Corinne talking to the man on the beach, the image now feeling like the key to everything. He packed a small bag, his mind clear and focused on a single goal: to find the man in the picture, to find Anand. The heat and humidity of Thailand hit Alistair like a physical blow when he stepped out of the airport. It was a world away from the cool, damp air of Portland. After a connecting flight and a long ferry ride, he finally arrived on the island of Koh Lipe. It had changed in the 8 years since Corinne was there. It was more developed, with more resorts and tourists, but the essence of the place, the turquoise water, the white sand beaches, the laid-back rhythm of life, was the same. He found a small guest house, the kind Corinne would have stayed in, and for a moment, the weight of his grief was so heavy he could barely move. But he pushed it down. He wasn't here to mourn. He was here to hunt. He started at the ferry dock, the hub of the island's activity. He carried the printed photo of Annan, protected in a plastic sleeve. He approached the long-tail boat drivers, the tour operators, the men and women who made their living on the water. "Excuse me," he would say, holding out the picture. "Do you know this man?" Most shook their heads. Some studied the photo, their brows furrowed in thought, before saying the face wasn't familiar. The days began to blur together. Alistair walked every beach, every dusty road, showing the photo to street vendors, guest house owners, and anyone who would listen. He was met with kindness, with pity, but with no answers. Doubt began to creep in. Was this a fool's errand? Had the man left years ago, disappearing without a trace? He was sitting at a small beachfront cafe one afternoon, staring out at the sea, when an elderly woman who ran the establishment approached his table. She had seen him every day for a week, tirelessly walking the beaches with his photo. "You are looking for him very hard," she said in careful English, gesturing to the picture on his table. "He was here when my daughter disappeared," Alistair said simply. The woman's eyes softened. "I remember the girl, the one the sea took. It was very sad." She looked at the photo again, more closely this time. "This man, his name is Annan. He was a boat guide, not a good man, always looking for fast money." Alistair sat up straight, his heart pounding. "Do you know where he is?" "He is not on Koh Lipe anymore," she said, shaking her head. "He left a few weeks after the girl, after the accident. Everyone said he was scared the police would think he was involved. He was the last one seen with her." She paused. "His family is not from here. They live on the mainland, in a small village near Sutton." It was the breakthrough he had been praying for. He thanked the woman profusely, his hands trembling as he put the photo back in his bag. He had a name and a location. The hunt was no longer blind. Alistair hired a local guide and translator in Satan, a young man named Kenji. Together they drove for hours into the countryside, to a small remote village of wooden houses on stilts surrounded by rice paddies. Kenji made quiet inquiries, and it didn't take long to find the house belonging to Anan's family. Alistair's heart was in his throat as they approached. A man was in the front yard, mending a fishing net. He was older, his face more deeply lined, but it was him. It was Annan. Alistair took a deep breath and walked forward, with Kenji by his side. "Annan," he said. The man looked up, his eyes narrowing with suspicion at the sight of a foreigner. Kenji began speaking in Thai, explaining who Alistair was. Anan's expression remained blank. He feigned ignorance, shaking his head. "I am the father of Corinne Levesque," Alistair said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "The American girl who disappeared from Koh Lipe 8 years ago." Annan just shrugged, turning back to his net. "Many tourists come and go. I don't remember." Alistair reached into his bag and pulled out his final card. Not the photo of Anand with Corinne, but the printout of the image from the laptop. The bikini bottoms, the Bitcoin address, the word red. He held it out. Then maybe you remember this. The moment Anand saw the image, the color drained from his face. His tough facade crumbled, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. He started shouting in Thai, waving his hands dismissively, his voice sharp and angry. "He says he knows nothing about this," Kenji translated. "He says you are crazy." "Tell him the FBI has the laptop," Alistair said, his voice cold as ice. "Tell him the Thai police know he sold it. They are on their way right now." It was a bluff, but it was all he had. The lie, however, was powerful enough to break Anand. The man's angry denials stopped. He stared at Alistair, his eyes wide with terror. And then he broke. In a torrent of frantic Thai, the whole sordid story came pouring out. Kenji translated as Anand confessed. He had seen Corinne on the beach and saw her as an easy mark. He thought she was rich. He offered her a private boat tour to a secluded cove, an offer she happily accepted. Once they were alone, he pulled a knife and took her to a hidden fishing hut on a deserted stretch of coast. He was the one who called himself Red. He used her laptop to send an anonymous email to the address he found in her journal, her parents' email. He demanded 5 Bitcoin for her safe return, sending the photo of the bikini bottoms as proof he had her, but the email never got a reply. Alistair and Helen had never seen it. It had been automatically filtered into their spam folder, where it lay undiscovered for weeks. As the deadline passed, Anand panicked. He couldn't risk letting her go. In a moment of cold-blooded fear, he killed her. He took her body out on his boat in the dead of night and dumped it in the deep channel, weighed down so it would never be found. He then sold her laptop and camera at the pawn shop and fled the island, using the official story of her drowning as his cover. As Anand finished his confession, the sound of sirens grew in the distance. Agent Kimball, true to his word, had coordinated with the Royal Thai Police. Alistair's bluff had become a reality. Uniformed officers swarmed the property and took a sobbing, defeated Anand into custody. Alistair just stood there, the sounds of the arrest fading into the background, the truth finally settling upon him like a heavy shroud. It was over. Alistair returned to Portland a week later. There would be no body to bring home, no grave to visit. Corinne was part of the Andaman Sea now, but the uncertainty, the not knowing that had tormented him for nearly a decade, was gone. He sat in his quiet living room, holding a framed photograph of Corinne he had taken out of the cedar chest. It was from her high school graduation. She was beaming, her whole life ahead of her. The sadness was immense, a profound, crushing weight. But for the first time in 8 years, it was a clean grief. It was the grief of a father for a daughter who was loved and lost, not the twisted, confusing sorrow for a ghost. He could finally mourn her. In the following months, Alistair started a foundation in Corinne's name, a non-profit dedicated to helping families of people who go missing abroad, offering resources and guidance to navigate the complex and often indifferent systems of international law enforcement. He had found his own answers through a 1,000,000-to-1 chance. He wanted to give other families a better chance than he ever had. The gray had not vanished from his life, but here and there, in the work he did, in the memories of his vibrant daughter, and in the peace that comes with truth, Small patches of color were beginning to return. Alistair's story is a testament to a father's love and the idea that truth, no matter how long it's buried, can eventually find its way to the light. It makes you wonder, though, if Anand's ransom email had gone through to the inbox instead of spam, do you think Corinne would have been saved, or was she doomed the moment she stepped on that boat? We appreciate you spending your time with us today. If this story moved you, consider sharing it with someone who appreciates tales of mystery and perseverance. Your support helps us continue to bring these important narratives to light.